my teens and my 20s, I've been with a group of friends, and we live by a life motto. And it's always been, if it's funny, do it. Now, that can be a wonderful way to get you into some great activities, some wonderful experience, and it creates a brilliant stream of anecdotes. Sometimes it has unintended consequences, though. So sometimes the things we do, the choices we make, set off a string of events, a connection of ideas, of activities, interactions, conversations that sometimes lead places, sometimes good, sometimes bad, sometimes useful, sometimes not so useful. And that's the story I want to tell you about. Cast your mind back to the 21st of April 2011. It was Maundy Thursday. It was the start of a long bank holiday weekend. As I said, my career up until that point, I was working for a national creative economy support agency. My job as head of partnerships was to go out and build networks, see people, just chat. I was a professional networker. I was really fortunate, professional networker. I was paid to go to conferences. I was paid to meet people. I was paid to learn from people. I was always surprised, though, that I never saw any of the colleagues from Bournemouth, from the agencies and businesses that I work with, at any of these events. So I thought it might be funny if I created an event, and I just decided to invite a load of people down to Bournemouth. So I sat there in bed on a Thursday, and I wrote a list. It was people I knew, some people I didn't know, some people I had a tenuous link to Bournemouth, some people I just wanted to know. And I wrote this list down. And I just thought, you know what? If I can get half of these people to say yes, then I've got a conference. Out of nowhere, I just decided to do it. They all said yes. So all of a sudden, I've now got 14 people coming down to Bournemouth to an event that hasn't even been designed, that's happening in 5 months' time. These people who are heroes of mine, I've just gone and done it. They've all said they're coming. Thankfully, it went without a hitch. Well, I say it went without a hitch. I lost £10,000. But it was great fun. And if it's funny, do it. That was September 2011. Then things got a little bit crazy. So, well, following on from that, I got approached by the UK Department of International Trade. Would I put on a Silicon Beach event as part of the Olympics? So down in Weymouth, I got to put on an event and invite a load of people to. Following that, although I'd lost £10,000 and I said I was never, ever going to do this again, I forgot that I said that, and I did it again. So this time I had a bit of profile, I knew a few more people, so I put on Silicon Beach 2012. This time I had 18 people, and this time I didn't lose any money, didn't make any money, but I broke even, so that was fine. And also, buoyed up by all of this, I got together with a group of connections and we organised a Christmas party. So we invited all of the local agencies, and I got 200 people in a room, and we had a Christmas party that no one had thought about doing. God, I've got a bit of momentum going here. I've got a bit of profile. So 2013, I upped the ante, and I got in touch with the advertising agency's Industry Magazine, and they sponsored the event. So now I had 21 speakers coming to Bournemouth. Bear in mind, I still had a full-time job. I still had a wife, and I still had 2 kids at home. But I did this, so I put this on. We produced a book with this event. Following on from that, a friend of mine got in touch, and he fancied the idea of doing an event. And he said, you know what you're doing. I clearly didn't. You know what you're doing. So we put on an event, and this time this was focused around branding and marketing. Our idea here was we would invite people onto our stage, and rather than them give their PR spin out, we would interview them, and we'd get the real story from them, and they'd tell us the story of how they marketed their brands. So that was once upon a time. Then another friend of mine, who, again, thought I knew what I was doing, she said, there's not enough women in the industry. Can we do something about that? So between her and I, we came up with this idea, again, using the connections that I'd been building. Can we invite some really successful women down, and we'll try and inspire a group of women, and we launched an event called She Who Dares Wins. I then did another Silicon Beach. I was really getting the bug for this. So I put on another Silicon Beach. This time, we got international speakers coming. I was flying people in from around the world. At that Silicon Beach event, there was a chap speaking, a bloke by the name of Nick Farnhill. Nick Farnhill was the chairman of Publicis, one of the world's largest networked advertising agencies. He told this wonderful story about how communities outside of London were growing and the power and strength of these communities. 2 weeks later, I went for lunch with him in London, and he introduced me to the team at Tech City UK. I went for lunch, went for a coffee with the team at Tech City. They told me that they were doing a survey to find out about digital communities outside of London. Now, this was on a Thursday night. They said, unfortunately, the survey's going to close on Friday. I asked them, can you just give me a bit of time? Because Bournemouth wasn't featuring in anything they were doing. So they gave me until Sunday night. On the train home, I was frantically emailing people. I managed to get 62 responses to that survey that then triggered a deeper study. And in February 2012, Bournemouth and Poole was named the UK's fastest growing digital hub on a result of all of that work. Then stuff got really crazy. On account of that, I got invited to Number 10, where I was advising the government on their technology strategy outside of London. I was invited to the St James's Palace, where I became a mentor for the Pitch at Palace Accelerator Scheme. I then got invited to the House of Lords. Because of the work that I'd been doing in growing the profile of Bournemouth, I was named one of the UK's digital leaders. I woke up one Sunday morning to find my name in the Sunday Times, and I'd been named a digital social entrepreneur. I was in the Maserati Top 100. I found a guy in Los Angeles who organised an event called Silicon Beach. If it's funny, do it. I emailed the guy. I said, you've got a conference called Silicon Beach. I've got a conference called Silicon Beach. Maybe we should do something. He said he'd give me a free ticket if I made my way over there. I said, what if I brought 20 people with me? Could we all get on stage? Can you give us some speaker stuff? He jokingly said, yeah, if you can do that. I got Air New Zealand to sponsor us, and I flew 20 people over to California, and we spent a week meeting investors and startups, co-working spaces. Then, keeping with that international vibe, a team over in Australia, who I'd worked with previously, said, we'd love you to bring Silicon Beach to Australia. So I flew out to the Gold Coast, and we launched an event in the Gold Coast. Still, we did another 3 once upon a time, another 2 She Who Dares Wins. It was a busy, busy time for my side project. Put on another event. Whew. You know, this is going incredibly well. Could it get any better? Well, so then I decided to take it to London. Now, the London event was really special. What I did in London was I got a program full of only female speakers, but I didn't tell anyone it was only female speakers. I didn't tell everyone that that was the focus of the event. These women are incredible. Their careers were astronomical. I was bathing in their reflected glory, and my ego was loving it. We did some more She Who Dares Wins. This was the largest one we ever did. We had 300 people turn up to that. I launched another event called Open Source. This was a networking event with a difference, where we did it in a nightclub in the evening, and people who came got a magazine at the end of it. I did a local event here in Bournemouth called That's the Way to Do It. I published a book where we got 1,000 copies printed, and we posted these out to the FTSE 250. Went back to Australia again. And then I launched a 3rd day to the Silicon Beach event. Whew. This is going fantastic, right? This is amazing. Something has got to give. This guy's Pete Traynor. So Pete Traynor had recently published a book called Human-Centered Design. He was a mental health advocate and an evangelist for more well-being at work. This was 2016, 8 years or so before it was cool. He'd launched an AI company. That AI company, after a chance meeting with a guy who was a suicide survivor, he was building a software platform that would analyze your online profile and try and look for moments of distress and see if they could do some early interventions to help people who are in a time of crisis. Now, these were the days before GDPR. So I'd given Pete and his team the contact details of everybody who was in the audience at Silicon Beach. He spent the first day trawling through everyone's online platform. And during this talk, at this point, Pete asked the audience, he told them what had happened and said, we've been analysing this, and there's someone in the audience. There's someone here right now who is in trouble. Can you just turn to the people next to you, turn to this person next to you and ask them if they're okay? I was sat in the front row with tears streaming down my face because I was that person in trouble. 6 weeks earlier, my wife had told me she was leaving me. That all this, the time that I'd spent on my side project, the connections I was building, the adulation I was swimming in, the ego that I was massaging, I'd become completely disconnected from all the people around me, the people who really mattered. As you can imagine, 2017 sort of flew by. I was in a daze. I didn't really know what was going on. I did an event in London. We had another load of great speakers, female speakers. We did another series of open source events. I did another Copacabana event. I did another Silicon Beach event. I was actually approached by two of the UK's largest publishing agencies who wanted to buy this conference off me. They were talking about amounts of money, life-changing amounts of money. I couldn't take any of this in because my world was falling apart. I went back to London. We did another event in London. Now, during this event in London, whereas I'd done 2 events with all female speakers, I wanted to do something different. So I chose to put a program of speakers on who were all under the age of 24. For me, then, there was a lot of talk about millennials. There was a lot of talk about young people, and I wanted to hear their voice. So I thought it would be really good to put those voices on stage. I received the most vitriolic trolling you could ever imagine. The dissent that I got online for daring to put young people on stage was astonishing. I was torn to shreds on LinkedIn and via Twitter. How dare I be so rude as to suggest young people could teach us old people anything? How dare I imagine that that is a thing that anyone would want to hear? Now, as you can imagine, in my fragile state at this point, this was not anything I needed or wanted to hear. So, in a moment of hubris, I decided to end Silicon Beach. That this thing that I'd been doing has now become unmanageable in my life, that I couldn't cope with what I was doing. So, I met with Mark Masters. I told him, I went on a podcast. I told everyone I was going to end it, and I did. And the Echo ran a story on it. The world then, the sunny skies of Silicon Beach, started to get very, very dark. Unbeknownst to me, I had built my entire identity around that event. That was who I was, it was what I did, it was nothing else. There was nothing else to me. And by ending it, I had no idea who I was. I sank into a very deep and at times dark depression. I managed to get through it by self-medicating, which I wouldn't advise, and kept my sunny disposition. But inside, I was falling apart. I ended up in therapy for 12 months. I can remember having a debilitating panic attack where I sat at the end of a bed, just crying, uncontrollably weeping. I managed to call someone up who talked me through it and talked me down. This carried on, my whole identity had been wrapped up in this until I was walking, until one day the phone rang. I remember the phone rang. I was walking down Chancery Lane in Holborn and I was listening to a female singer singing on my headphones. She had been in a band in the 90s, and in the 80s she'd been my first love. And when I was 16 and dating this woman, working at Saatchi & Saatchi had been everything I'd ever wanted to do. And the poignancy of the moment, as I was walking down the road, heading to Saatchi & Saatchi to deliver a workshop, listening to my first love, really, really landed with me. And then the phone rang, and it was a guy that I'd worked with previously with another company. And he said to me, "Matt, do you still do that innovation stuff?" That phone call and that line saved my life. It meant that the next 18 months were the wildest 18 months. He handed me a brief that was the brief of a lifetime, and I got to build the team of a lifetime, and we just had fun, spending money like it was going out of fashion, building stuff that was going to change the world, just doing the most exciting thing, and I got my mojo back. I realized who I was. I realized that I was more than just that brand. So now, older and wiser, ironically, as my business for 10 years had been called Wise Old Uncle, I was now back in this space where I could organize events. I could distance myself from them. I could realize the value that people got from the connections that I built. And I was once again happy again. And my wife, who said she'd wanted to leave me, decided she'd made a massive mistake and came back. So, the point is, everything we do, every choice we make leads to something else. It leads to something. And you don't know what that might be, but you owe it to yourself and you owe it to the people around you to be present in the moment, to be present amongst the connections you've made and the networks you're in. Thank you very much.